everybody, and welcome back. I have my car up in the air today because this morning, I sold my calic converters. As you can see down here, I have nothing holding that white pipe up. It's just hanging. My original plan was not to sell the calic converters. I wanted to drive this car on the street and not be worried that I'd have to deal with cops. Or even if I did, I can go to a state referee if they gave me a ref ticket and they would pass me. This engine is pretty much completely stock. Underneath the hood here, I don't have any aftermarket parts. Still a stock airbox, intake, headers. Down here, I do have somewhat of a aftermarket Y pipe that leads to an exhaust muffler, which is I want to say it was a MagnaFlow. Sorry, Burla. And originally when I purchased this car, it came with test pipes. These things over here. But as you can see, I put JB weld over these welds that were on it. The guy who did the weld job did a really bad job. And it was splatter everywhere. There were holes, cracks. So I took these off for that reason as well. They're Manzo pipes. And the calic converters that I put onto here I actually picked up from this car back here. It's a 2003 coupe. I picked this thing up for parts. I bought it for $500, so it's been well worth it. The calic converters I sold alone were worth that. Because this wasn't planned, I didn't have time to go pick up exhaust gaskets or gaskets for that test pipe. So it looks like I'm going to use these metal ones, and these ones are in pretty bad condition, but I think I'm just going to have to throw some silicone on these gaskets temporarily. I need to get this car out of the garage in the next couple of hours, so I won't have time to run down to the auto parts store and try to see if I can find these. So same thing with the hardware. The calic converters come with studs, and they don't have bolts, so these right here are the nuts and the washers from the calic converter, but the test pipe being used, and I don't know where I put the exact bolts for this thing at. They don't have the studs, so I'm gonna have to find bolts for this, which luckily I keep all of my nuts, bolts, and screws here in this area, so I know I'll definitely have something that'll work. So now it's just a thing of getting them onto the car. I won't be able to film too much of this just because I am on a bit of a time crunch, but as soon as I get them installed, I'll turn the car on and show you guys how it sounds. Another thing too is, I don't know if I'll have a check engine light. An old trick back in the day was to, when you'd have a test pipe, you would put the O2 sensor into the test pipe, but it would stick out. So it would stick into the pipe about this far, and it would read your exhaust gases like it would on a calic converter. But these ones are extended out pretty far. So the O2 sensor is only going to go so far into here, making it to where it doesn't read all of the exhaust fumes. Because it's tricking the O2 sensor, the downstream O2 sensor, it's going to compare it to the upstream O2 sensor and see if there's a difference. This may make it to where I don't have a check engine light, but we'll see. Hopefully in the next hour I have these on the car. everything's back in. You can see down there, the test pipe. That nut right there that you see, it's probably the hardest one to get to, especially because on these test pipes, they have a bolt that goes in this way and a nut that attaches onto it. So when you go to put that one on the factory catalytic converter, the bolt sticks out of it. So there's nothing to allow it to spin since it's spot welded onto it. On this one here, when you're trying to tighten it here on the top, you need somebody down below to hold it, or some way to wedge a socket in there so that it holds it from the other side. If not, as you're tightening up here, the other side's just going to keep spinning. So that's the same with this one here, and it's hard to see this one, but that one up there. The other two, this one down here and the one over there, this one over here on this side is welded into the exhaust manifold, so you only have to deal with two. Underneath here, it's a little easier to explain. This one right here is a bolt with a nut on it. This is pretty easy to get to and tighten it with your hand tools down here. But this one up here, which is hard to see, there's very limited amount of space in between here. So this is one where you stick the bolt through the back end, put the nut on this side, and then you have your extension that goes up to the front of the car. If you have somebody down here holding this bolt, just a wrench, and you're up there on top, and you're torquing it down, it's very easy. This one here is the one that is casted into or spot welded or welded onto the exhaust manifold. So this one here is pretty simple to get to as well. On the passenger side, same thing. This one is a nut and bolt, very easy to do, factory one. And up there, which is hard to see, is the same thing. Hold this side, use your extension from the front of the car down to here, tighten it up. Aside from that, let's see if I can turn you around here. This is the JB welded bracket with the O2 sensor and the Y pipe. Having the car lower down makes it to where it rubs over speed bumps and stuff, so this right here is leaking. Plan on switching that one out in the future, but for now, test pipes are on. I'm just gonna let everything, all the gaskets cure. I end up not using the two bad gaskets. I just end up using this RTV kind of stuff, gasket maker. It's high temp, but it takes 24 hours for it to cure. But at least this way I can get the car back up down onto the ground, roll it out of the garage so I can get my next project inside of here. For now, it's just time to get the car off of the jack stands and let the gasket maker cure. Once that's done, which is going to be tomorrow, I'll have this car parked outside. Oh yeah, I need to put the intake back on. You need to remove the intake so that way you gain access to that bolt, or those bolts. But this is a simple 5-minute removal install. So I'm going to put that back on, lower the car back down, pull it outside, wait until tomorrow, and then we'll start it up and we'll see how this thing sounds. If it sounds good this way, I'll leave that Burla exhaust on there, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot louder and a lot more raspier. So definitely going to put this on if that doesn't sound good. Unfortunately, the G35's mid pipe is welded to that Burla exhaust tip, so I won't be able to use that one with the stock exhaust. I'm thinking this resonator right here is going to be smaller, so it's going to allow more volume out of it, which is probably good for horsepower, but bad for sound. But I don't know, we'll see. It's going to be a lot of testing, a lot of mix matching. If it comes down to it, I'll just cut the muffler off of this one, put the stock muffler back on. But if I can get away with just throwing this one on there, then I'm going to do that. But until tomorrow. Alright guys, so it's been about 2 weeks now. I put about 200 miles on this car, so I'm pretty familiar with the way the car is performing, the way it sounds, and the way it smells. So those are going to be the three categories that I do my review on. First being the sound. The sound of this exhaust has definitely increased in volume. Not only is it louder, it's a bit more raspier. It only happens in the higher RPMs or at higher throttle position, but it kind of gives you that same annoying sound that a lot of the old Hondas had when people would just chop the tip off of their exhaust and run a universal APC exhaust muffler or muffler. It definitely isn't a good sound, at least in my opinion. I like more the deep growl to the car, and this is by far not even close to that. So as far as sound goes, it is louder, more annoying, and kind of embarrassing. I actually don't like giving it gas just because I hate being that little ricer who revs everybody up and is annoying everyone as they drive down the street. But that's just me. If you like being that kind of guy, you'll love these test pipes. A pro to the sound, I can't really say anything good about it. At least with the exhaust system that I have, which is pretty much a stock exhaust system, with the exception of a Burla muffler on it. I do have some leaks in a few places. One leak in the white pipe where the flex joint is, and another leak close to where the muffler is. So those can contribute to an unpleasant sound, but overall, test pipes on this car when it comes to sound was not a good idea. Next category, the performance. The performance of the increase in horsepower of these test pipes was not extremely noticeable. Now again, because I don't like the way it sounds, I try to avoid punching the car or punching the throttle as much as I can, just because it kind of is embarrassing, and I don't like to sound like I'm racing everybody. But I haven't really noticed a huge increase in power. Whenever a car gets louder, you usually think you're going faster, so maybe in my head I'm telling myself to try to compensate for the loud sounding exhaust, and it's not actually horsepower. But because I'm thinking that way, it may make it to where I feel that I haven't gained any horsepower. But it wasn't enough horsepower to where I really feel a difference. Now again, these test pipes are on the stock exhaust piping. That MagnaFlow muffler is not really that unrestrictive, so maybe with the bigger diameter piping I would feel more power. But with this system, I cannot say that I've increased in horsepower. Next category, the smell. This is probably the worst of all three categories. The smell that these test pipes have made this car produce, it is disgusting. After about 30 or 40 minutes of driving this car, I feel a burningness in my eyes. It definitely is creating a lot more emissions, and the only thing that's changed is these test pipes. So I've had the same white pipe that has a leak in it, I have the same exhaust that has a leak in it, but because these test pipes are not burning off those extra emissions, I'm smelling it. The moment it goes into the white pipe and it leaks out, it's going back into the car. At times I even find myself wanting to pull over and just take a break, get some fresh air. Down here on the climate control, I notice that if I do have it in recirculation mode, not as many of the exhaust fumes come into the car because it's grabbing the air and just recirculating inside of the cabin. But if I do have it on this setting, even as it is right now, I can smell the exhaust fumes, and they're pretty strong. They will make it to where you feel burningness in your eyes, or it just is not pleasant. But anyways, this is going to be a track car. I'm not intending to drive it on the street, so if I'm not the one who's creating this smell, I'm sure the car in front of me on the track is going to be creating this smell, and regardless, I'm going to smell the emissions. I guess it's time for you guys to hear this car. I'm going to keep it in second gear and have my GoPro 4 Session. It's a pretty old camera, mounted to the rear bumper, capture some RPM. So right now I'm at 3,000. 4,000. I'm going to shift into third. Full throttle. That was about 5,000 RPMs. I'm going to slow down here a bit. So I'm still in fourth gear. I'm about 2,000 RPMs. I'm going to do about a half throttle pull. That was about 4,000 RPMs. One thing I forgot to mention about the sound of this car is on the freeway at about 3,000 RPMs, it gets a lot of drone inside the cabin here. So before, without the test pipes, when I had the calic converters on, you could have a conversation with the person next to you, or you can cruise around, listen to the radio, and you wouldn't really pay attention to the exhaust. With the test pipes on here now, it makes it pretty obvious that you have a loud exhaust, and it becomes pretty annoying on a long freeway trip. It's time for some pulls. I have the windows down now. I'm gonna do second gear from 2,000 to 5,000. So turn here. All right, so it's gonna be a full throttle pull. Now we're at about 2,500 in third gear. Half throttle. .500 RPMs in fourth gear, full throttle. I'm only going up to about 4,000 RPMs. So yeah guys, that's my review of test pipes on my setup. It's not really for me, but there are people who want the most power they can get out of their car, out of their VQ engine, and you know, the test pipes are not really a bad performance mod if you are trying to get the most horsepower, if you're turning this into a track car. But for everyday driving, I wouldn't really recommend it. Maybe get some high flow cats to at least burn off some of that emission smell. And I hear Motordyne makes pretty good test pipes, that they have this baffled area or something like that, to where it creates a nice sound. They are pretty expensive, and again, you know, my car is being built on the cheap with pretty much leftover parts, or parts that I can buy that are very, very inexpensive. This is a track build, so I really just need to get this car on the track. I need to stop putting on parts and buying parts and stuff like that, just because, and as it is, I don't really have the funds for it. So you know, track time gets pretty expensive. There are still a few things that I need to pick up, you know, racing harnesses, seats, helmet, gas, tires, all that stuff is you know, you need to put a budget on the side for that kind of stuff, and I keep spending money on parts. Eventually I'm gonna run out of funds. So at this point, I think it's just time that I get this thing on the track. And if you guys would like to see that kind of stuff, please subscribe and like my video. Every single like, comment, and subscription helps. So
please do that. I appreciate you watching this. Thank you. Bye.